Last week, I talked about how the wide receiver position is arguably one of two positions that get drafted very often, even number one overall in a lot of people's drafts. But there's one position that I believe trumps that in order to be the number one overall pick in most of the drafts I've ever been in and I've ever observed, and that is the running back position. Unlike wide receivers that hold a lot of spots on your roster, generally I see running backs holding the second most spots with around 3 to 4 running backs on a roster. Therefore, in today's episode, like what we did with the wide receivers looking at the top 50, we're looking at the top 40 running backs going into fantasy football this year. There's not a general number I'm putting on them, but where I see them being drafted in order. And I'm going to kind of explain my reasoning behind this, and we're going to see how accurate my list is and how much you guys agree with it or disagree with it. There's going to be some question marks, some head scratches for sure, but I think it's going to be very fun and I cannot wait. It was fun actually setting up this episode like I did the last one. And of course, the next episode after that is the last fantasy football one per position, and that's the quarterback position, which I hope you guys are ready for that. But today we are looking at the top 40 running backs in fantasy football. Before I get started, a couple little sports updates that I want to talk about. First of all, congratulations to the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Florida Panthers for winning the NBA Finals for the Thunder and the Stanley Cup for the Panthers. Congratulations to y'all. I know the Panthers went back-to-back and the Thunder get their first title since being a supersonic back in the 80s. So that is great. And then the other thing is the NBA draft has happened yesterday when I'm recording this, and my Mavericks got Cooper Flags, so I'm pretty excited for that. Anyways, let's get started. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and if you do, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's get started. This is the Game Day Hour's top 40 running backs for fantasy football. We're first going to look at 40 through 31. At number 40, we have Cam Scatbo. 39, we have Rachaad White. At 38, we have Tyjae Spears. At 37, we have Najee Harris. At 36, we have Caleb Johnson. At 35, we have Ramondre Stevenson. At number 34, we have Austin Eckler. At 33, we have Brian Robinson Jr. At 32, we have RJ Harvey. And at 31, we have Tyrone Tracy Jr. We have two giants here in the bottom half of the list at 31 and 40. Obviously, Tyrone Tracy is going to be the number one for the Giants, but Cam Scatbo back with Arizona State was actually really successful, and he was arguably one of the quietest yet explosive players in that college football playoffs. Obviously, we only got to see one game against Texas. They ended up losing that game, but I think it's a nice pickup for the Giants because ever since losing Saquon Barkley, that team doesn't have a strong running core. Tracy's good, but I think that you are missing a lot not having Saquon Barkley, so it could be good. Cam Scatbo could be the number one for them in the future, so we'll see. Rachaad White, I had him drafted in like round 7 of last year, at least the middle rounds, and they switched over to Bucky Irving, and he was basically non-existent. Rachaad White is better in the pass game. He is not going to be used as much as Bucky Irving for sure. Tyjae Spears, I really like him. I think Tyjae Spears is somebody who could be pretty successful on the Titans offense. He was somebody I drafted really late. I got rid of him early. He didn't really do a lot for me last year. I think that if Tennessee starts actually running the 2 running back system, Spears could be pretty successful, have a few games where he pops off. Najee Harris, it feels wrong putting him this low, but I feel they're going to use Omarion Hampton a lot more. I think he has a lot more upside, and Najee Harris, he's been pretty disappointing as a Steeler. Like, he's been good, don't get me wrong, but I thought he was going to be like top 5 running back consistently for Pittsburgh, and he wasn't that. And I don't think he's going to be the number one. He's going to be used a lot, but not enough. 36, we have Caleb Johnson. Obviously, Pittsburgh's running back core ever since losing Najee is kind of weak. I expect them to do the 2 running back system with Jaylen Warren. I don't see a lot happening. Again, he's not somebody who's really high on my list, but I think they'll use him pretty well. There's going to be some way they scheme him. 35 is Ramondre Stevenson, which feels weird because I have another Patriot on this list a little bit higher, but Stevenson has had himself good games, but ever since Elliott went to the team a couple years ago, Stevenson hasn't been the same. Like, he hasn't had that spark that I felt he needed, especially when he had Mac Jones as his quarterback. Stevenson, I feel, should be higher, but I think this is the right spot for him. He hasn't performed super well, but he's still somebody who's going to be in the top 40, maybe even drafted later on. And then look at this, 34 and 33 is back-to-back Commanders, Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson Jr. They use them pretty well. Obviously, Austin Eckler can't be the main back like he was in LA, so that's why he's a lot lower. But Brian Robinson is somebody who I think is going to be very well to take care of that, and he's one of their best offensive players, and I think that he's going to get a lot of yards. I put them kind of the same because they're used almost the same, different purposes, but they put up the same same kind of production. So that's why I have it there. RJ Harvey is one that I saw a lot of analysts putting him pretty high. I didn't even know who this guy is. Kind of had to study him a little bit. But I think that there is a place where Denver is going to use him correctly. Obviously, they're going to be a little more pass happy with Bo Nix and Cortland Sutton, but I do see RJ Harvey playing a good significant role, especially if you continue to improve that offensive line and the defense continues to work for you as it has. And then lastly, Tyrone Tracy, we already talked about him. He's going to be the main back. That's why he's a lot higher, and he is pretty talented. He's just not Saquon talented, but he is at the top of this 31 through 40 list. So that's what you see for the first 10 running backs. Obviously, Najee Harris is the one that I hate putting there the most, but it is what it is. Here is 30 through 21. At number 30, we have Travis Etienne Jr. At 29, we have Javonte Williams. 28, we have Jalen Warren. 27, we have Travion Henderson. At 26, we have Quinshon Judkins. 25, I have Tony Pollard. At 24, I have Isaiah Pacheco. 23, I have Chuba Hubbard. At 22, we have DeAndre Swift. And at 21, we have Chase Brown. Start with Etienne. I hate putting him here, but I'm pretty sure based on how the draft went and just how they're molding that offense, it's going to be a little more pass happy, having Brian Thomas and having Travis Hunter there. I see that they're probably going to air it out a little bit more, but Etienne, if they used him correctly, he's top 10, but obviously last year kind of showed they didn't really use him well, so it is what it is. At 29, we have Javonte Williams, former Denver Broncos with my Dallas Cowboys now. He's low, and he's the only Cowboy on this list. It makes me sad that the Cowboys running back room is this depleted, but it is what it is. I mean, Javonte Williams, the offensive line is getting better, and they may use him pretty well, but he's going to obviously share some time with Miles Sanders, and I don't think that the production is going to be really there. It's going to be more pass-happy now that you have CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, so that's why Javonte Williams is this low. 28, they have Jalen Warren. He's actually been somebody who's been pretty impressive as a backup to Najee Harris. Now he's in the number 1 role. I imagine he's going to be like Tony Pollard with the Cowboys, somewhere close to 1,000 yards and just slightly below double-digit touchdowns, which is why he's there. Travion Henderson with New England, I think they're going to use him more. He's very, very talented back in Ohio State, which is why I see him being used a lot more properly in New England. I think they'll run with him more because Ramondre Stevenson has not been as impressive. We've already talked about that. I think Henderson will overlap. At 26, Quinshon Judkins, I think it's Judkins or Judkins. I have no clue, but also with Ohio State, also drafted in the 2nd round. Chubb's now with Houston, so they lost one of their best players that they had in the last 5 years, maybe even longer. I think that Judkins is going to play a very important role for Cleveland, trying to balance out an offense who hasn't even really selected what their quarterback's going to be. I'm going to actually put a prediction on who I think their quarterback will end up being to start in 2025, because right now it's hard to tell, but he may be used a lot because your number 1 receiver is Jerry Jeudy, who I'm not the biggest fan of. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what Quinshon's able to do, but 26 I think is a fair and reasonable spot. 25, we have Tony Pollard. Obviously, he's the main back in Tennessee with Tyjae Spears behind, but Pollard is very talented. He's just not going to get as much touches as he was with Dallas a couple years ago. That's why he's sitting here at 25. At 24, we have Isaiah Pacheco. He's one of my favorite players, especially on the Chiefs. I had Pacheco on my team last year. He got injured. I think injury is what's pushing him down, and they may try to run with a different scheme, passing a lot more. But if they're smart, they use Pacheco in the right way. He should be, by the end of the year, somewhere as a top 15 running back. But that's only if they use him properly, which they should, because Travis Kelce, he's getting older. The wide receiver core is it's getting there, but it's not there. That makes sense. Chuba Hubbard, I mean, I looked over, I was like, well, are they going to include the guy from Texas, Jonathan Brooks? But it seems like Carolina's going to go with Hubbard. And because of that, I know what he's able to do. He has a high ceiling of what he can do production-wise, which is why he's at 23, and they may just be a lot more ready to go with him right now and give Brooks one more year before he takes over. DeAndre Swift, I kind of hated putting him this low because he's very talented, but he is with the Bears. He's still somebody who can get you a 1K season, potentially double-digit touchdowns, but we're just going to have to wait and see. And then Chase Brown is low. I will say this, Chase Brown was in one of my shorts as far as he had the second most, or tied for the second most touchdowns in the air, so they do use him well there, obviously with Joe Burrow being their quarterback, but this is where I see him being, because obviously there's a lot of names that are way better, and they're going to give you a lot more than just touchdowns. They're going to give you a lot more yards. I don't think Chase Brown is going to be used as much, but he is on a very high-powered offense, and he'll have his moments. That's why he's at 21. 20 through 11, we have Omarion Hampton, Aaron Jones, David Montgomery, Breece Hall, Alvin Kamara, James Conner, James Cook, Kenneth Walker III, Joe Mixon, and Kyron Williams. Start with Hampton. He is the rookie here. He is the second highest rookie running back. Obviously, we know who number one is as far as rookie goes. But I think Hampton's going to be used a lot more. He put up some really good stats in North Carolina, playing against better competition, in my opinion, than Boise State's Ashton Jeanty. And you'll see the Chargers use him in a lot of ways. There's going to be a scheme for him. Jim Harbaugh, the way he's made that offense, there is a scheme in place that is going to have Omarion Hampton be very successful. I'm thinking somewhere in the ballpark of running a 700 to 600 in both rushing and receiving yards and getting double-digit touchdowns in that regards. So that's why he's pretty high. Aaron Jones, he's getting older, but obviously he's on a high-powered Minnesota Vikings offense that is probably going to rely on the run a little bit more with not a rookie quarterback, but a second-year quarterback who didn't play due to injury. So he's going to be very important in that scheme. David Montgomery, there's no way I was going to put him lower. He and Jahmyr Gibbs, the best backfield in football, without question. He has to be up there. He gets you some good yards. He gets you a lot of touchdowns. He needs to be there. On the contrary, you have Breece Hall, who I put a little bit higher, but the reason why he dropped so far in the rankings is because the way the Jets are going to use him in this three-back system is going to hurt him in production. But he can have those games where he pops off. But he's going to need to have a lot of big plays throughout the entire season because he's not going to get as much production. And that's the issue. That's why he's a lot lower. Alvin Kamara obviously is getting older. The Saints will probably use him a little bit more than what they were if they were going to lean with Derek Carr. Obviously, he retired, and now they're going to have to run with this rookie quarterback, or their quarterback situation is very weird. So Alvin Kamara might be used a lot more. Who knows? James Conner has to always be up there. He's not the flashiest player, but he has a lot of production. And in my league, he consistently gets into double-digit points. He has to be up there. James Cook led with rushing touchdowns, but to be fair, Allen had a lot of yards, and that's what keeps him from being in the top 10 despite getting in the end zone a lot, is that he's not going to get as many rushing yards because Allen shares the load with him. Therefore, you're more relying on him getting in the end zone. And if you're able to do that, you'll have some games where he pops up for 100 yards, and with that, you'll have those high explosive games that he can produce. Kenneth Walker's at 13 for the simple reason I don't trust Sam Darnold. I get they have a pretty good wide receiver core. I think he had a good one-off season with Minnesota. And to be fair, Minnesota has a very good defense that's coming up, and you also have a Minnesota team that I feel is offensively loaded. Is Seattle on that same caliber? No, but they have some good pieces. I think Walker will fit in pretty well. We're looking at 1,000 yards, double-digit touchdowns with him. Joe Mixon performed really well with Houston first year. He was probably the bright spot on that offense because I thought Stroud took a step backwards. The wide receiver core didn't do as great. Obviously, I have a lot of faith in Nico Collins. I think he's going to do very well. But Joe Mixon, he was a workhorse. And I think that a full healthy season, we're looking at 1,000 yards, more than double-digit touchdowns, I would say. And then Kyron Williams. I mean, Williams is one of the more underrated running backs in the NFL, constantly getting 10 points per game in my league. He is a very high draft pick. I'd say I see Kyron Williams going in probably the top 3 rounds. He is that talented for sure. Actually, as a matter of fact, you can say as high as round 2. I don't think he's a round 1 pick, but I think you can argue round 2 if you'd like. But hey, alone, this 20 through 11 is an incredible list. Get ready to see the top 10. 10 through 1. At number 10, we have Bucky Irving of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. At number 9, we have Ashton Jeanty of the Las Vegas Raiders. At number 8, we have Josh Jacobs of the Green Bay Packers. Number 7, we have Devon Achane of the Miami Dolphins. Number 6, we have Jonathan Taylor of the Indianapolis Colts. At number 5, we have Derrick Henry of the Baltimore Ravens. Number 4, we have Christian McCaffrey of the San Francisco 49ers. At number 3, we have Jahmyr Gibbs of the Detroit Lions. At number 2, we have Bijan Robinson of the Atlanta Falcons. And at number 1, we have Saquon Barkley of the Philadelphia Eagles. Start with Bucky. He's probably the most loved player in Tampa Bay, either him or Mike Evans, but Bucky Irving, everybody loves him down there. He was explosive. He was fun. I didn't see him coming. Obviously, I had Rachaad White on my team. I didn't think Bucky Irving was going to be that guy, but Bucky Irving was so talented last year. I'm looking at a season of over 1,000 yards and roughly 13 to 14 touchdowns for Bucky Irving. He's going to be very explosive, and people should pay attention to that. He's going to have a really good second year. Barring injury, I expect him to blow up. Number 9 is Ashton Jeanty. At times, they had him at the top 5 in many lists, and I'm like, no. Ashton Jeanty is very talented. He had 2,600 rushing yards in his last season at Boise State. He averaged in between 150 to 300 rushing yards a game. I get that, but it was Boise State, and that's not big competition. They did play Oregon, but when they played Penn State, he didn't do so hot. So you're also talking about a Raiders offense, which their only big weapon is their tight end. They don't have a receiving core, so you know they're going to defenses will prioritize stopping the run. I think that Jeanty will have his moments, and he will get in the ballpark of around 1,000 yards and maybe 10 touchdowns, but I don't see him blowing up any further than that. Now, that's not as much as I think Bucky Irving's going to get, but I think that people will draft him, or will most likely draft him, around the number 9 spot, because I can't imagine him being super high on this list. I get he's super talented. It's not yet. For how diverse of an offense Green Bay has, Josh Jacobs is going to get his own. We're talking over 1,000 rushing yards, double-digit touchdowns. Very talented. He's still within his prime. Obviously, he was formerly with the Raiders. The Raiders lost him. The Packers have used him very well. And I expect, because I mean, Josh Jacobs, he was number 5 in fantasy last year. He had 15 touchdowns on the ground. He can get you a lot. Number 7 is Devon Achane, for the simple fact that he can kill you in both ways. He can rush all over you. He's great in the pass game. Obviously, he led running backs in receiving yards and receiving touchdowns. Well, he was tied in the receiving touchdowns, but he was very talented in both areas. And I think they will use him a lot more. Now that he doesn't have Mostert there, he is the bell cow. He will get a lot more. Number 6 is Jonathan Taylor, for the simple fact that Taylor is still an extremely talented running back when he is healthy. Last year, he was very high last year. And to say rushing yards, not much with rushing touchdowns, but got a lot of attempts last year. Great in yards per game and yards overall. He's still a very valuable running back to have. He was someone on my team, and if he didn't get injured, he would still have an incredible year. He played great last year, and that cannot be understated. And here's the controversial one. At number 5, we have Derrick Henry. Henry was second last year in fantasy in almost every single stat and tied for first in touchdowns. So why does he go down? Well, okay, let's compare him to Saquon Barkley and look at their quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson's going to get his. I know Jalen Hurts is also a quarterback that tends to succeed in the rushing game, but I see that there's going to be more of a split load with Henry and Jackson than with Barkley and Hurts. Therefore, I put Henry at 5, but that's still, I mean, I see him being lowered in many lists. I feel like I have him at a very reasonable spot. At times I saw him at number 7, number 8 on other people's lists, and I'm like, no. Very, very talented running back still, and he's going to make you pay. Number 5, I think, is reasonable, because look at who's number 4. In a healthy season, Christian McCaffrey should be number 1. He is the most lethal running back on both sides of the ball as far as rushing and passing, or I guess receiving goes. But the problem is injury. Because he's probably going to be fully healthy to go going into this next year, Christian McCaffrey is bound to be one of the top picked running backs, and he's going to always be that way. He's just so diverse in how he plays. Very good. And Christian McCaffrey, I mean, I see more upside to fantasy points with him than Derrick Henry, but that's just my opinion on that one. Number 3 is Jahmyr Gibbs. They're going to start inserting him more into the offense, and they started last year. I mean, he was in both of the receiving lists, as you saw in the shorts. There's also a lot of touched it. He also had a lot of rushing yards last year, pretty high, and touchdowns as well. He is putting up a lot of statistics for Detroit. That's why he's at number 3. At number 2 is Bijan. I get that Bijan was put at number 1 because he has so much upside in many other people's lists. I'm just not ready to do that. When I tell you Barkley's stats, you'll see why, but I get it. Bijan Robinson was top 5 in many statistics. He was not also very outstanding in them either. I mean, when you go to the rushing yards, he had 500 yards, roughly less than Derrick Henry, and yet they're putting him at number 1. That, to me, I don't know. I agree he should be top 5 and be as high as this, but not number 1. Number 1's for sure Saquon Barkley. Over 2,000 rushing yards. That's 125 rushing yards a game. Let's say you don't get a touchdown at all during the season. You still get over 12 points. Now mix that with the fact that you do get touchdowns throughout the year and you also can succeed in the pass game. How is Barkley not number 1 on most people's lists? Is it because of injury? Maybe. But Barkley's upside is incredible. On a Philadelphia offense like that, yes, it is incredible. And this is where I have the dilemma, because I have the number 1 overall pick, and right now I'm zoning in on Barkley. I just have to wait to see what other experts say, because I could switch to Bijan, I may jump to Jamar Chase. Who knows what I'm going to do. But right now it's Barkley who would be my first overall pick. That's just my opinion on it. And with that is my top 40 running backs going into fantasy football. Remember, we're kind of basing a lot of this on standard scoring, not PPR. So if you're somebody who's a part of standard scoring, this is my list specifically for y'all. PPR, I mean, I'd say that maybe Devon A-Chain's a little bit higher on your list. But other than that, I don't think there's a lot of changes I'd make there too. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and if you do, please leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for the success on the channel. Obviously, we're moving along very well. We're getting a lot of views on shorts, and these last few episodes, we're cracking 100. My Kickers episode now has become my most viewed episode on this channel, and then last episode, we're at 76 views, which is just very successful. Obviously, I want to see these views go higher and higher, but I like where they're at right now compared to where it was last year. Thank you guys so much for all the support. And go and follow me on all my social medias and interact with me on my social medias. They will be in the description below. Anyways, I hope you guys have a great day. Take care. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.